the spark of lightsabers, the clash of steel, the flurry of fists. There's nothing more iconic than a great fight scene. But what separates the mindless from the truly memorable? See, fights come in all shapes and sizes, but the greatest ones have one thing in common. They tell a story. And in this video, we're gonna see why. Have you ever heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words? While I think that awesome choreography, epic settings, and even just cool technology enhance the appeal of good fight scenes, they're not what make fight scenes good in the first place. The best action goes above and beyond, engaging the audience and playing a larger role in the narrative. They explore the full depth of dramatic potential, using physical conflicts to demonstrate deteriorating relationships and the true colors of those facing imminent death. So today, we're going to look at 3 different fight scenes from 3 very different stories and analyze their commonalities: stakes, a turning point, and character development. To start, let's take a fight that, while small in scale, manages to communicate a story of epic proportions. Dune is filled with fantastic action. Great not just because it looks cool, but because each and every fight means something more. Each fight is a pivotal moment for the characters, but the fight I want to focus on is the final one of the first book. The fight between Paul Atreides and Feyd Rautha. Until this moment, the whole story has revolved around Paul Atreides and his twisted hero's journey. Early on, his father, his house, and his entire life are destroyed as part of an imperial ploy for power, executed by the Harkonnens. And for the rest of the plot, Paul is dead set on justice. Revenge, really. The fundamental question of the narrative is, how far will Paul go to enact his vengeance? So for this cosmic space opera to end not in a massive battle, but in a knife fight is unusual. And yet, it works perfectly.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
This fight has stakes, both internal and external. Beyond just the personal vendettas that Paul is executing against the Harkonnens and the Empire, it's a struggle for power. And given his role and acceptance of the title of Kwisatz Haderach, it's a struggle for both religious and political power. Between he and Feyd specifically, it's a struggle for types of power. The human versus the animal, self-mastery versus savagery, and it will decide the fate of the known universe. Both Feyd and Paul are fantastic fighters, but each of them represents a different philosophy of life, and this can be seen in the way they fight. Feyd cares nothing for honor. He taunts Paul, reveling in the sport of death.
She's your pet? Any special attention for the pet?
In the book, he even tries to use a poisoned hidden dagger to kill Paul. He wants to win. And for Feyd, it's just about the fight. Whoever survives, however they survive, is by default the strongest and deserving of rule. He enjoys every minute of it and hardly thinking of what he will accomplish if and when he wins. But for Paul, life has value. He is a man of honor and discipline and respect. The lives taken in his rise to power serve a purpose, and this fight is the same. Not fought for its own sake, but for the general stakes he is championing. Earlier in the story, we see Paul kill for the first time, in a fight to the death just like this one. But in that scene, he hesitates, because it's forced on him. After he eventually kills Jamas, he's offered the man's wife as a battle prize, according to the Fremen rules of combat, but he refuses to make her his wife or concubine and accepts her only as a servant. But in this fight, Paul instigates. He is the one who challenges the Emperor and his champion for both political gain and revenge.
Stand or choose your champion.
I'm here, Atreides.
If it wasn't a means to the end of his goals, he wouldn't do it, and he is aware of all that is on the line. The fear we see in his eyes is for the potential failure of his mission. not his own life. Paul denies his immediate desires to achieve greater things. And after he defeats Feyd, he willingly claims Princess Irulan as his proxy wife, going against his heart and making Chani only his concubine. He accepts his Machiavellian role because he strives for goals. Paul has changed, and though he won, we question if this change was really for the better, even though we rooted for him this whole time. All of this and more is communicated in a single fight. Now, I get it. Dune is a highly philosophical piece of work, so of course there would be, threads and themes woven through every aspect of the story. So let's take a look at something a little bit more mainstream and perhaps even more iconic. Now, there are a lot of fight scenes in Star Wars. Like, a lot. And honestly, maybe I'll even do a whole separate video on those fight scenes. But in today's video, I want to talk specifically about the fight between Luke and Vader at the end of Empire Strikes Back. One of the most emotionally charged and quite possibly the greatest lightsaber duels of all time. The stakes in this fight are once again both internal and external. At this point in the Star Wars narrative, Luke has come to Cloud City to save his friends. He has only been partially trained in the Jedi arts, and the last time we saw Vader fight somebody with a lightsaber, he killed Obi-Wan. Luke is not ready for this. Yoda and Obi-Wan even tell him to not go.
You must not go.
But Han and Leia will die if I don't.
This is a dangerous time for you, when you will be tempted by the dark side of the Force.
Yes. To Obi-Wan you listen.
He is here to prove himself as a Jedi, to control his emotions and finally defeat Vader, but also, the entire reason he is here is to save his friends, something inherently emotional. In fact, the genius of this fight is that his internal and external stakes are both in conflict with one another. As far as the turning point, it's not as much an escalation as it is a challenge. For the whole first and second film, Vader has been established as a truly terrifying villain. No one has ever stood up to him and lived to tell the story. But in this fight, Luke draws his saber first. Challenging Vader directly and going on the offensive. He begins to face his fears and use his training to take on Vader outright. For Vader, this is one of the few times he doesn't just strike. I mean, he has bigger plans and responsibilities to take Luke to the Emperor, and there's also his personal connection.
I am your father.
No. It's not true.
It's at this moment that we realize that there are greater forces at play, and the whole movie and Star Wars narrative shifts. The character development, much like Dune, is strewn throughout the fight, both in choreography, dialogue, and just overall attitude. Compare Vader's mannerisms to Luke's. Vader starts in control, toying with him, using one hand. As things escalate, he begins throwing objects with the Force at Luke, not so much as a show of strength, but really, I think, to test him. Whereas Luke is eager and aggressive. The last time he saw Vader, he ran. And this time, he rushes into the fight. Luke is fearless, or perhaps, a little overly confident, and yet, as more of a trained warrior, he dives headfirst into the fight. And though Vader spends most of his time only toying with Luke, he holds his own until the end, even getting a final hit on Vader before getting his entire hand cut off. Obviously, the emotional culmination of this fight is Vader revealing that he is Luke's father, something that crushes Luke emotionally moments after he's been defeated physically. And as far as character development, I think this single line, this single reveal, does wonders for both Luke and Darth Vader. Suddenly, Vader is no longer this imposing, heartless machine. He's human. He's a father. And furthermore, he actually seems to care. Of course, it's for his own devious plans, but I think it's hugely impactful to see Vader's humanity in this scene, to see him actually plead with Luke to join him.
You have only begun to discover your power. Join me, and I will complete your training. With our combined strength, we can end this destructive conflict and bring order to the galaxy.
And after this fight, the story of Star Wars completely changes. It's no longer just good versus evil. It's the final act of a terrible tragedy. Now, for this last action scene, I want to look at something that's a little less traditional. I mean, the last few have just been duels with lightsabers or knives or, handheld weapons, but this fight is one with magic. The fight between Voldemort and Dumbledore at the end of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
And you shall be dead.
Now, this may be a controversial opinion, but I actually think this fight is one of the coolest in the whole film series, and may even be better than the final fight between Harry and Voldemort. I know there were a bunch of parts from the book in this scene that were supposed to be included, but weren't, and a lot of people are mad about that, but hey, isn't that the story with all these Harry Potter movies? The reason this stuck out to me is that this fight is really the first time in the series we get to see full-on magical warfare, with Harry and his friends facing hordes of Death Eaters and the Order of the Phoenix coming to save them, as well as Voldemort versus Dumbledore. It feels like war. And with the death of Sirius Black, the stakes and tone immediately shift. So going into this story, but especially this finale, things are dire and it really feels like anyone could die. There's so much at stake in this fight, and it's all been building up to this moment. For the whole story, Harry has been struggling with visions. Voldemort teasing and using his mind, giving him visions, trying to control him. But the story has fantastically wound this together with his own emotional conflict and teenage development. He struggles to master occlumency, a defense against this mental warfare, because Harry cannot manage to achieve peace of mind. He's angry at the magical bureaucracy which focuses on trivial politics and refuses to acknowledge the war that is brewing in the background. So while it mainly focuses on Voldemort versus Dumbledore, they're fighting over Harry, over his future, really his soul.
You've got to mean it, Harry. She killed him. She deserves it.
As far as turning points, not only does this whole movie serve as a turning point for the series, but I think this fight scene also symbolizes a massive turning point in this story's specific narrative as well. Up until now, it seems that both Voldemort and Dumbledore have been working in the shadows, playing politics, biding time, building strength. We've never actually seen either of them in all-out warfare, and we've never gotten the opportunity to fully understand either of their motives or characters. But now, with Harry in trouble, we see Dumbledore take action without hesitation.
It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom. The orders are on their way.
For Voldemort, this is presumably the first time he's seen Dumbledore in years. And this time, he's not a child, so he too acts without hesitation. As a side note, this is also kind of the first time we ever see like two master wizards go head-to-head in a duel, and the way they do this is phenomenal. You can feel the difference. The shift in stakes, the shift in intensity, and the shift in skill. Which brings me to the character development. Because this fight is using spells as opposed to actual weapons, something the film does masterfully is to adapt these spells both visually and stylistically to the person using them. Every color, every attack matches each character perfectly. If you pay close attention to the fight, Dumbledore only plays defense. Every move he makes, every spell he uses is all about deferring and containing as opposed to attacking. His focus is to save Harry, and all of his spells are for that purpose. And though the spells are different in both the movie and the book, the protective aspect of Dumbledore's spells remain the same. And in a movie that only has limited screen time for people like Dumbledore, I thought that was a really cool detail. Voldemort's approach is in complete conflict with this mentality. He is a fundamentally insecure character, trying to draw Harry and everyone else around him into darkness, not simply because he believes it, because if he can convince them, then it must mean he really does have power. And that's what we see in this fight. I mean, sure, he is a powerful threat, but everything he does in this fight is an attempted affirmation of that. The fire, the glass, all of it. He's showboating as much as he's trying to kill Dumbledore and possess Harry. So, why do fights matter? Well, because everything in a story matters. For whatever reason, it's easy to separate fight scenes from the narrative and approach them in a category of their own. Something to be sprinkled in to retain interest, or something cool we can just watch compilations of after the fact. But I think the common elements between these fights, the reason that they have such narrative impact is because they actually mean something. They matter to the plot, and as a result, make a better scene and a better story. But these are just my thoughts and opinions on the matter. I mean, I would love to know what you guys think in the comments down below. Which of these 3 fights is your favorite fight scene? I mean, what do you think is the most iconic fight scene in the kind of sci-fi and fantasy world? And honestly, I mean, would you want to see more videos like this? I've been really pushing to do things a little bit more seriously and analytically, and so I'd love to kind of get your feedback and thoughts on these videos. Do you want to see more stuff like this? Do you want to see more videos about fights? Maybe a Star Wars specific video or a Harry Potter specific video? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and no matter what you do, keep reading, keep writing, and I will see you all in the next video.